Welcome to Faith Rising, a podcast about living with bold faith in the modern age. On this episode, Daniel and Amber chat with Miles and Catherine Weiss about marriage.
Hi, we want to welcome you back to Faith Rising, and we want to encourage you, if you did not watch last week's show, we want to encourage you to go back and watch that because we have our dear friends back with us again, Miles and Catherine Weiss. I would like to call them marriage experts. Is that okay?
No. Catherine just said it off air. We are a work in progress, like everyone else.
So he does have a lot of experience.
Yes.
Yeah.
So
I've been married so many times.
No.
You tell us you just go over what I said last show.
Well, I've been a licensed marriage and family therapist for over 30 years. I was licensed in 1992, and we've done marriage seminars from Hawaii to Siberia. That's all true, and we just work with couples. We believe for the best in reconciliation for couples, and I like to think of myself as the Jack Russell Terrier of counseling. Like, I'm not going to let you get divorced if possible. I'm going to ask God to help you. Yeah. And so we've seen some real miracles over the years, and it's a calling. You know, it's sort of something that God gave us together, and we just love doing it.
It's something that's really needed, and there's definitely not enough of. There's a shortage for help with marriage. There's definitely a shortage for help in marriages. They've written this book called When Heaven Hits Home, and we are running a deal on that for you right now at gloryofzion.org. You can get 3 of these for $30, and so we're just going to go into, I think we want to start with talking about some miracles and some testimonies that you guys have seen.
Absolutely.
Yeah, well, that's been, we like the slow, steady progress. We also like the wow. And think about some testimonies. We were in Russia, and we did 5 days of marriage seminars for these Russians that had been married under communism, and then they got saved. They were Jesus people, and they wanted more than anything to be married with Jesus at the center.
Right.
So after 5 days of leading them in these principles that are in the book and what we were gathering over time, we did a ceremony of, if you imagine 500 people recommitting their lives to the Lord, sanctifying their marriages in Jesus. It was a highlight for us. And while we were there, we wound up counseling a couple. He was alcoholic. He was on his way out totally. And we wound up, I'll never forget, on our knees, with the couple on their knees and an interpreter. So no privacy. It was all going on through an interpreter, and we prayed him back into the Lord, and he was totally restored. He became an elder in the church. I mean, things just went way beyond what we could have done because we saw the power of God in restoration. We've seen that so many times.
Well, and it was so beautiful to see, because at first we were plowing a lot of ground because the understanding of covenant in marriage in Russia wasn't there. So we were plowing and and then at the end when we did that, we could feel the Holy Spirit literally come as a hoopah and cover the whole auditorium and marry these people. We led them in a marriage ceremony, and so many of them had come up and run and said, "We've been waiting our whole life to be married under God." So just to not take it for granted for the gift that we had, and these little mamas were so grateful. And then I can also remember a couple that there's infidelity, and so I think that is one of the hardest, or not the hardest, but that's one of the ones that are challenging, because trust isn't necessarily, forgiveness is immediately granted, or you're granted and you continue to forgive, but trust is built. And you taught them how to bring that restoration around.
What you said about trust, I think, is really, that's really hard. And trust can be broken through more ways than infidelity. There are a lot of ways that trust can be broken. How do you help couples rebuild trust? I think that probably must be the biggest challenge.
It's one of them, and there's no cookie cutter solution, as you might imagine, that each couple is different, and love is given. There's no explanation for love. It's just odd, comes from above. But trust is built. So there's often a proving time whenever there's been any kind of breach, whether it's been drugs and alcohol, whether it's been infidelity, pornography, any kind of split, somebody flirting. It can be very big or
like
very
an emotional,
minor.
even an emotional type sometimes people don't realize their emotional relationships that cross a boundary and causes stress.
Exactly. And a lot of times to keep the trust, I'll talk to people about the chuppah, the marriage canopies that the Jewish people get married under. Think of it almost as a spiritual bell jar. You know, that you two are in this together and other people don't get to get in that. And that involves even flirting or just being inappropriately close with people of the opposite sex. We were raised in a holy roller environment, so we had the Billy Graham rule, you know, like you're never alone with a woman. We were 12 years into our marriage when I asked if I could go to a counseling conference one town away with my co-counselor, who was a woman who was not a threat to our marriage. And Catherine said, of course you can go. But we were so scrupulous about that. And so it was a little extreme, you know.
I feel like being more careful has been really good. And something Daniel was really good about this. It was hard for me when we first got married. I had a really strong group of guy friends and girlfriends. We were just a great group. And we had a great time together. And Daniel just, you know, he said, I don't have friends that are girls. And you're going to have to lose some of those relationships. That was really hard for me, and I really didn't understand it because I hadn't been saved for very long. Right. And I didn't understand that boundary. But now, looking back, I can see the trust that we have in our marriage with each other because we set those boundaries early on. I was really angry at him sometimes because of it. But now, looking back 18 years ago, I can see that was a really, really good boundary that you set.
Absolutely.
I told her there was only room for one rooster in the hen house, and it didn't go over real well. But that's part of that molding period when couples come together and they get married, you know, and we were just talking about this a little while ago. A lot of people think that getting married is going to make your life easier or going to solve all of your problems or different things. Right. And the reality is that it comes with a lot of challenges, but it forces us to grow.
Exactly.
You know, when we get married and we come together and we set those boundaries in our own lives and both begin to respect that within a covenant, it forces us to grow personally. And that's really what marriage is about, is not only taking the next step with the Lord, but taking the next step with each other.
And it makes us, it calls us to be more like Christ, right? To be more sacrificial and to not want our way, but God's way, or what will please the other one, not in any abusive way, but what will give the other one faith and trust in the relationship, for sure.
Yeah, and that's sort of the modality or the economy of God is you know, be the servant of all. If you want to be the greatest in the kingdom. So if I want to be the greatest in my kingdom, I need to be the servant of my wife. And so you have an economy of what can I do to bless you? Or
that's an excellent way to put that. You know, as many people as I've talked to, I've heard that concept before, but I've never heard anybody
brand
put
new,
it like that.
It's live for you. But yeah, that's kind of it.
Can you say that one more time?
I'm not sure. I think I said, if you want to be the greatest in God's kingdom, learn to be the servant of all. That's what Jesus said. Well, it's the same in our home. If I want to be the greatest in my kingdom, then I need to learn to serve my wife. You know, and it doesn't come naturally. You know, we're egocentric. We're self-centered. We believe that we should get what we should get when we want what we want. And it's a spiritual act to learn how to be there for each other.
He's wonderful at that.
You're wonderful.
Aw, good. We're having marriage moments here. We're enjoying each other.
All right, I would cut there.
No, affirmation is key. You know, like we try to affirm each other every day. You know, and I think like these are habits that you build, right? Maybe it doesn't come naturally to be positive or affirming, or maybe you just start taking your spouse for granted. You know, I thank Miles all the time. Thank you for being my spell check. You know, he's like Jeopardy. You know, and I'm not. So you know, and then I'm a good navigator. I drive well, and so we complement each other in our giftings, and we are able to be lighthearted about it. Like, and I'm grateful for you.
Well, thank you.
Look at this. We're having marriage moments.
Well, I think sometimes it's little things too. Like Daniel always puts water by the bed for me at night, and like he knows I have a harder time sleeping. So then in the mornings he's more sensitive. Like you know, and so there are things he's like, "What do you need?" And so we've learned to
That's beautiful.
Yeah.
That's beautiful. And now, so we're talking about intimacy, but also children too. It's a fine dance to make sure that you keep your bond. Your bond is the most important bond, even though your children, you want to bond with your children, but they're actually more secure when you're secure with each other. So when we first got married, or when we first had kids and Miles would come home from work, I know a lot of people are working at home, and I know a lot of people have gone through tremendous transition during this COVID time and suffered loss, and also suffered because we didn't know how much time to be apart. How can I miss you if you don't go away, right?
Yeah.
And during COVID, nobody could go anywhere. We had each other, so we were locked down, right? So, but when you would come home from work, we would make sure that we would connect first, and the kids would see, oh, mommy and daddy are strong, and so the family unit's strong.
Yeah, and it's really good for kids that have anxiety. The primary treatment for kids with anxiety is strengthening the marriage.
Right.
Because the kids' anxiety, if they have school phobia or night terrors, any of the dream issues or sleeping issues, the best thing for them is not more attention. The best thing is for them to see mommy and daddy loving each other and secure, and their anxiity goes down.
And they feel like that's a boundary for them. Yeah.
I try to tell couples with young children, especially, I say, don't forget to stay married while you're doing this thing.
Oh, yeah.
Because you have, which means, a date
Invest
night
in your
means
marriage.
going away every quarter. I tell people, go away for a night if you can afford it. Go away for a night every quarter. Go out to dinner or do something once a week. Just make sure you stay married, because guess what? They're going to grow up and leave.
Yeah.
And then what you have is what you got.
Yeah.
And Gary Chapman teaches the love languages, finding out the love languages for each other, because you can be pouring in and pouring into your mate, thinking that that's scratching the itch that they have, and that doesn't. Miles is words of affirmation, and if I'm trying to give him acts of service, it's going right over his head. Or so knowing that his love language that makes him feel full, his love tank full, is words of affirmation, and so I try to make sure I do those.
You do it well. We have those in the book. I added a sixth one. Gary Chapman
Why
has
don't you
5.
list them real quick?
There's acts of service.
They're in this book.
They're in the book. Yes. Acts of service, quality time together, words of affirmation, physical touch, not necessarily sexual, but physical touch.
Right.
Right?
Good huggers.
Yeah.
Gifts.
And gifts.
Which is, he has no idea with gifts. That's why he couldn't even remember it. He doesn't need gifts.
I don't need stuff. So I have to remind myself to get gifts.
Yeah.
Okay. So to which I added, or God added, the word of the Lord. Because what I found out early in our marriage is that I can do all those things as well as I can and learn what Catherine's love languages are, but what really floats her boat is when something comes from heaven.
Yeah.
I was reading the Bible and I saw this for you,
Yeah.
or God spoke to me this about you. That's a whole other dimension
Right.
of things, which, growing up with a prophet, that's kind of normal.
Yeah.
But for a lot of people...
No pressure there. You hear the Lord for me, baby.
But it's it's something that I know is a core value for Catherine, and so I try to bring her something from the Lord.
Right.
Yeah.
Mine is quality time. I just love quality time, and so my QT time. So I need my QT time. So those love language, learning from those, that's Gary Chapman's, and just learning that, and that you're able to communicate with each other. But I think also coming out of COVID, we have to really remember that we've also had maybe too much time together, and that it's okay. Because what if one's an extrovert, one's an introvert, and you have to know your mate, and you know the rhythm of your mate, know what each other needs. And sometimes if Miles is counseling like all day, he's used up all of his words.
Yeah.
So then I need to realize he has no more words for me, and I can't go into a pity party and be like, "You have no more words." I have to
Does that sound familiar?
You have no more words for me. And so
I've never seen you do
I know.
I need lots of words.
Oh, okay, yeah. So
And I'm not a real verbal person. So that's
Right.
And he's a physical touch person, which I love.
Yeah, there you go.
But I do like a lot of words. But he's not. I've accepted. It is so wonderful that
it's that she expects all those words right at bedtime. In the morning when I'm drinking coffee, I talk more.
I appreciate so much how affectionate Daniel is.
There you go. So you have to learn how to appreciate who your mate is and not try to create them in your image.
Yeah.
So your words, and so sometimes you're going to need to hang out with some girls and get lots of words.
I do. And I do
you
that.
know, and
That's really important.
yes, Rabbi.
Well, it's really important for couples for the guy to have guy friends and guy events and experiences, and for the girl to have gal events and gal experiences, and for you to have friends as couples that you are safe with.
Yeah.
Right? And because we cannot be each other's all in all. It's not going to happen.
Yeah.
Right? So to alleviate the pressure, we have to have the tribe.
Right,
community.
Right, and I love that what we've learned over is that we need girlfriends, you need guy friends that you go hunting or do what you want, do what guys do together. We need girlfriends to do what, we need to do shopping or whatever, just girl time. And then, couple friends, like you said before. So it's so important that you expand on that.
Well, I see a lot of young women, and women my age who lose relationship with their girlfriends. And I'm so thankful that I've had the same friends for a very long time. I have friends here.
Yeah.
But my friends and I make it a point to about every 3 months, my friends from middle school,
right?
Every 3 months we do something together.
That's beautiful.
And Daniel says, "What if we normally get a hotel room?" And he's, "What do y'all do?"
Giggle.
I said, "We just sit in the room and
you,
talk."
You just giggle.
Until 2 o'clock in the morning.
And talk. And so I get all my words out, and we talk about totally different stuff. But something that I realized Daniel was doing that I did not realize he was doing, and I have one friend, we laugh about this, because her personality is actually more like Daniel. And growing up, I would talk myself to sleep, and she would just fall asleep. I didn't realize all this time he was actually, because I still do that. I've gotten better over the past few months, actually. But I didn't realize he's actually listening to me.
Aww.
And I told him, you don't have to do that. You can just go to sleep.
Okay, this is another
See,
thing.
the Lord used my strong point to draw us closer together.
That's amazing. So men want to solve problems,
Yeah.
and women just want to talk it out, right? So women, they want to, and I'm learning all this from you. You jump in any time.
Well, you're onto something.
Okay, go for it.
Turns out men and women are different.
Yeah,
totally.
Regardless of what you read in the news or you watch on CNN, men and women are actually different. And so the overarching difference is that women want love and security, right? And men want respect and sex. We're very simple creatures.
Yeah.
And so, if you have that as a kind of a guideline,
Right.
you understand that these different ideas mean
Right.
different things to each gender, right?
right.
Of the two genders that there are only.
Yes.
There's two genders and it's different, right? So that's why, let's say regarding intimacy, regarding sexuality, we're on totally different wavelengths because women are wired, everything's connected. That's why women can have sex and think about the laundry at the same time. We can't do that. And God is so smart, he put women on a 28-day cycle and he put men on a 72-hour cycle. That doesn't make sense. The math doesn't work out. Every 72 hours we're ready to make a baby.
Yeah.
Right? However, the idea is that when the
Is that a scientific fact?
Yeah.
That's really interesting.
Oh, yeah. We're like, that's why we seem to be sex
more,
obsessed.
they're more aware of it.
We seem to be obsessed with sexuality. It's God's fault. He put us on this wavelength to procreate and to keep the species going. But here's the cool thing about it, is that he's very smart. He knows the 28-day cycle and when there's going to be a few golden days in the month when a woman will actually feel, as opposed to us, we're kind of like either obsessing about it, and we'll talk about that in the culture, but biologically, we're kind of ready to go, right? And that's the clue. When a man feels the urge to merge, that is his clue to be nice to her.
The girl.
Yeah.
To be kind to the girl.
Win her. We have 25 ways to win your wife.
Yeah.
You've mentioned them, listening at bedtime,
Right.
making coffee,
Pour
leaving
a
the
glass
cup
of
of water.
wine, draw
Yeah.
a bath.
Whatever
Right.
it is, those
Watch
nicenesses.
a movie together.
Yeah, they're not nothing.
Right.
They really draw you together,
Yeah.
right? And so what men don't understand is it's not just like those three little words, hey, you awake.
Yeah.
No, the idea is that you cultivate love over the time that you're together,
Right.
and then there's more openness for sexuality.
And something I want to say is, because our culture is being so sexualized and it's being perverted, and in faith and in the church and in our faith world, sometimes we don't want to talk about sex. As people of faith, we have to start talking about it the right way. So we've gotten much, and our kids think it's funny, but we've explained to them like us together. That's normal. That's what's normal. And so we've just. And they think they're not uncomfortable. That's great. They think it's funny. But we've had to loosen up, and I think we've had to talk about it more than other generations did because of the perversion that's running rampant in the world. And we talked about this before, but I've talked to several friends, and just several friends that live different places. And I have a friend who is a wonderful women's minister. She is about 70 years old, and I refer to her a lot. And she's worked with so many thousands of women, and she told me that this big concern that she's seeing is that women my age, like 40 and younger, they are not having any intimacy, no sexuality in their relationship at all. And when she told me that it's normally the man who doesn't want to.
Yeah.
So what would you see?
So there's a number of dynamics in this. One is how you manage the other parts of the relationship. Remember I said men want respect and sex.
Yeah.
So if a woman is disrespectful or is putting him down or speaking openly negatively about him to other women or to people, he will shut down sexually.
Yeah.
Which is, we think that's impossible because we still think we're teenagers and we're just, good to go. So there's that. That's one factor. The other factor is age. It turns out sexuality does change with age. And that's a whole subject. I love what the comedian Dana Carvey says. That they just won't let us die. I've got 2 fake knees. They can just do everything. So sometimes we outlive our hormones, and we need to have some functional medicine doctors that we can talk to about strengthening our hormonal system or all of the factors that are biological. And the other thing is that we are living in a world that is digitally depressing our human interactions, not just sex, but face-to-face human interactions. If you take the studies are not in yet. I'm a big fan of not going with psychological fads, because if you do that long enough, you wind up with what my field is doing now, which is travesty,
confusion
regarding transitioning young children and all that stuff. It's horrifying. It's child abuse.
Yeah,
and so,
I agree.
But so I've been very cautious over the decades to not get caught up in psychological fads.
You all are in California, where it's hitting
trending
really hard.
faster.
Trendy faster.
Yes.
So that said, there seems to be, the longitudinal studies are not done yet, but seems to be that men's testosterone levels in the Western civilized so-called countries, developed countries, has dropped significantly.
Why?
Now, well, there's the BPA's, the plastics.
Okay.
There's the hormones in the meat.
Okay.
There's the influx of digital interference. Where you can get either caught up in just the mechanics of the digital thing. It doesn't have to be pornography, although it can go there. Back before I was a believer, before I knew any of this stuff, there was a book that was written in the late 60s, early 70s by a guy from San Francisco. It was called 4 Arguments for the Elimination of Television, going back 40 years. And his argument wasn't the content, that's too violent, it's going to make violence. It wasn't about the content, it was about the technology.
The addiction.
About the technology itself. And one of the examples he used was that if they were selling an inanimate object, like a box of cereal, they had to have 60 changes per minute. If they were selling an animate thing, they had to have 30 changes per minute. And he was tracking the addictive nature of the technology. Now, if you take that and multiply it by umpteen times, to your phone. I mean, we're in the matrix. We are all copper tops. We are connected to this thing that is, hey, pay attention. And it's not just about the content. Pornography is a whole thing, and there are great helps out there.
Right.
In my practice and in the churches that we're involved with in California, we use a group called Avenue for men. We have Pure Life. We have Covenant Eyes for your screens.
Right.
There's content protectors and there's technology protectors regarding the electronics themselves. But the point is that think about where we've just been. 2 years of masks. 2+ years of limiting human contact
Right.
and emphasizing online contact. We are in a war
Yes.
to maintain the human race. And they're
Yes.
coming at us with things that are technological, that are digital, that are born out of hell,
Right.
and that have to do with diminishing our ability to just be with each other.
Yeah.
And you said something about the increase of sexuality.
Yeah.
That's one of the landmarks, the hallmarks of a declining civilization.
Right.
Yeah.
Is when we become so obsessed with sexuality that no longer has the context
Right.
of life and the great pleasure that
Of
God
marriage,
gave us.
covenant.
Covenant.
It belongs in covenant.
And that,
God likes sex. He invented it. You know?
Yeah.
yes.
But when we get overwrought with it,
yeah.
then it's really historically tied to the decline of civilization.
I love what Miles has taught through the Shabbat, because Shabbat is where everything shuts down. You're supposed to shut out the world, shut out the electronics, not be religious in it, because we are not religious, but we try to have fun, try to have a meal together,
Yeah.
try to remember some good things that, around the table, try to have a nice meal. Usually in Israel, somebody always brings flowers. In Israel,
that.
it's just
It's so
done
easy to do it
for
there.
you. So here we've given some tips of how you can incorporate that in your family. And
Oh,
one of the
that's great.
things is one
your
of the
book.
unions.
Yeah.
One of the unions is to have a recreational time together and intimacy.
Yeah.
Sex.
Yeah.
Yeah.
On Shabbat, and I didn't know it was a Jewish thing, but not like we do it every Friday night, but you want to make, sometimes you need to make appointments to be
absolutely.
together.
Sometimes you have
because
to
life
plan
just
your sex
happens
life.
to you.
Well, I heard this,
Especially
on
with
this
children
I
around.
felt like you wanted to say something, but who goes first, me or you? Okay. I saw this on this one group I mentioned, Marriage 365. They said,
Yes.
They said, planned sex is better than no sex.
Exactly.
And I
gosh,
had
yeah.
some of my unmarried friends said,
Yes.
they said to me, what is it like being married for almost 18 years? Don't you probably never have sex? And I thought, where on earth did you get that idea? They said, well, all of our friends that have been married for that long, they never do. And I just thought, that's heartbreaking.
Yeah.
Why? And so it made me start to wonder and ask that question, what's going on there?
Right.
Because we just love each other, and that's easy for us. That's not been a
But you
struggle.
have to do it on purpose
Yeah.
because the other parts of the relationship impinge on your sex life.
Yeah.
So you have to sometimes plan for it, and you have to have a sense of humor about it.
Yeah.
And sometimes it seems pretty mercenary. Hey, I'll meet, we got this,
Yeah.
and we'll kind of, and sometimes it's like that, but you have to be able to laugh about it.
We're like, the kids are gone.
Yeah, exactly. The kids are here. Turn on a movie, so that they can't hear you.
Yeah.
right. Or so.
You have to be practical,
creative.
and you have to. These are real things that you have to talk about.
I was just thinking about our first pastor would do these
Yeah.
overseas meetings. I was one of the helper setup guys, so I traveled the world with him, and we had these large outdoor Billy Graham style meetings, right? And his kids used to say, as they grew older, they said, I never understood that when Dad came home from overseas, Mom and Dad would always go in the room and watch a really loud cowboy movie.
That's really funny.
So,
What were you going to say, honey?
Yeah, and so Amber and I even had been watching a documentary a while back where some of the creators of the applications that are on iPhones and different technology were saying they don't allow their own children to use the product that they
Exactly.
created because they know that it's created to be addictive.
Right.
And that addiction has so played a part in our society that it's taken away from the intimacy. Exactly, what you guys were saying.
right.
Exactly. It's a genuine detriment.
Right.
And that's a great example of do as I say, not as I do, because these heads of state, of the CEOs of Silicon Valley,
Yeah.
they're very careful with their own children. And yet we've just opened this up. And I'm watching my grandchildren that my son and daughter-in-law they're being very careful.
So beautiful to
and
watch.
it's really comforting
Yeah.
to me because we
Yeah.
were super careful back in the day when it was VHS tapes. So we understand that. Something that is important for all of us is when I perform a wedding, when I officiate a wedding, I usually do 6 counseling sessions. That's
Right.
kind of my requirement, 5 or 6 sessions with people. And the last session is about sex. And then I would always ask Catherine, I want you to come in at that session. And she would say, historically, not anymore, historically, they'll figure it out. It's sex. They'll figure it out. And I say, no. Because either they've been out there
Yeah.
with bodies littered all over the landscape and pornography and everything else, or they've been in the church being told, don't. Okay, now,
Right.
And so I've had experiences with people who were elders in a church that told me that for the first 7 years, they didn't know how to please each other
didn't know how
because
to have
they
an
were
orgasm.
taught religiousness about sexuality, and the guy didn't even know where the bells and buzzers were on his wife. And so, that takes healing and instruction and open talk about it.
Yeah.
And it's not nothing. It's something that God created for us to have a good time.
Right.
Well,
with
and if
each
your
other.
wife is enjoying it, then she's going to want to be with you all the
Right.
time.
Correct.
I mean, so if
Hopefully every 72 hours.
Now you're going to remember.
He'll never forget that.
that's good though, because that falls in line with what I know, and so I didn't know that was a fact. That's really good to know that's a fact.
So we really need this really good question about a healthy attitude and knowledge. My people die for a lack of knowledge. We need to know each other's bodies. We need to have the freedom to explore. And if we have shame, we need to deal with that. We need to be able to have a safe place to talk about it and ask questions, and maybe for girls to speak with an older woman about it, not you.
That's okay. I am an older woman.
For the mamas to help the daughters, and for the dads to help the sons, and to be able to have that dialogue. It may not be in the nuclear family. Maybe there's somebody else who can fill that role, but we really need that to be open.
And also share about that, women are aware of their bodies, and they don't like to be naked. The lights don't want to be on, and men don't like to be naked with their emotions.
Yes,
so
exactly.
so if we can understand that about each other, we can have grace for each other. You can cover me about how and when, and make sure the door's locked if you have kids, and the lights are just right, because you feel better about yourself.
It's really true, and that's axiomatic. I'm glad you said that, because there's different kinds of nakedness, and for women, it's difficult, no matter how gorgeous they are to others. They
You
have
still feel
insecurities, and I know
insecure.
women that are like that. There's insecurities, right? And that's normal. Insecurities about physical nature. For men, it's insecurities about emotions. We're just not that good at it. We have to learn. To learn.
Well, hygiene's also a big factor too.
Sure.
Something I love about him is he always smells so good.
Well, there you go. You're
And so-
very practical.
I do that for myself.
But it works for me.
That's not an attraction thing on my end. Just so you know.
That's an important part of this too. Is hygiene.
Absolutely.
Thank you for joining us on Faith Rising. Be sure to join us next week for part 3 of our conversation with Miles and Catherine Weiss.